What's going on? Tube of the Ube. UFC 305 predictions. So, this is my first time doing this on this channel. So, let's get into it. And after the fight, we'll come back and see how I did. Let's get into it. Let's start at the early prelims. So, we got Stuart Nickel versus Jesus Aguilar. This guy, Stuart, how disrespectful. They can't even put his picture in there. He is a prospect. This is his first fight in the UFC. Apparently he's a good wrestler. I've only seen like one of his fights. There's not much on this guy. Jesus Aguilar is a veteran. But yeah. Not gonna lie, this fight is pretty tough to choose because there's not a lot to look at with these guys. Stuart, he's a promising prospect with solid grappling skills, and he has a lot of finishes in like the local level scene, but I mean, those guys don't compare to these UFC guys, so we'll see. Hard to gauge how good he actually is. Yeah, this one's tough. Stuart Nickel is the hometown guy though, and I'm gonna go with the hype train. I'm gonna take Stuart Nickel. Jesus Aguilar only has, I think, 3 fights in the UFC, and 2 of them were to some nobodies, so yeah, we'll go Stuart Nickel on this early prelim fight. Alright, now we got Kenan Song versus Ricky Glenn. Song, he's a heavy hitter, man. He's kind of one of those double-edged sword guys, though, where he can dish out some damage, but he also takes a lot of damage, and he could get clipped. And this Ricky Glenn guy, I don't know. I mean, he's a pretty versatile fighter, but he's only had one performance where he looked really good, and that was against Grant Dawson, who Grant Dawson is pretty good. But it seems like his kryptonite is these heavy hitter fighters who can just dish out these heavy blows and send him sleeping. But for this fight, I'm going to take the Chinese man. I think he's going to clip him, and I think that damage is going to be too much for Ricky Glenn. I just think this is a bad matchup for Glenn, so I'm going to take Song. Alright, and the last early prelim fight, we got Alex Reyes versus Tom Nolan. So Tom Nolan, he's an interesting fighter because he is one of those fighters, like, if you just look up glass cannon in the dictionary, you're going to see Tom Nolan. He can dish out some damage as well. He's a heavy hitter, powerful striker. He's definitely capable of knocking out his opponents, but even a terrible fighter like Nicholas Moda could knock him out in the first round. In fact, Martinez hurt him as well in the first round before being knocked out. I doubt Nolan would go far in the UFC because of his glass chin and lack of durability, but somehow he is the biggest favorite in this card. I mean, look at these odds. Negative 1,200 is crazy when he has a chin like this. I mean, I don't know. This seems like a good spot where I would take the underdog. Plus 750 odds is insane when you have a chin like that. Yeah, so this is an interesting fight here. I mean, ignoring the odds, I would definitely take Tom Nolan. But if I wanted to be a little risky and have some fun, I would probably take Alex Reyes upset. But okay, now we're getting into the Jack Jenkins versus Herbert Burns fight. Jack Jenkins, he's coming off a pretty lethal injury. He had injured his arm after a nasty fall a little while ago. That was a while ago. What was that? A year ago? And Herbert Burns, he looks very promising. But the thing that scares me about this Burns guy is he doesn't seem like he has a huge heart. And that definitely comes into play in some of these fights. Like when you look at the that one armbar that happened to, who was it? Sandhagen. Man, that was pure heart getting out of that armbar. I know I would have tapped. 99% of the population would have tapped on that armbar, but there's some guys that they're just willing to die in there, and Herbert Burns is not one of those guys. So sometimes he just seems like he almost quits when he gets in there. So for this fight, I'm definitely going to take Jack Jenkins. He's had time to recover, get his body right, and I think he's going to go in there and get the knockout victory over Burns. Now we have Casey ONeil versus Luana Santos. She's the girl that does judo all the time, is always dancing, doing her judo. She's pretty tough, man. She's pretty tough. But so is Casey ONeil. She's the hometown girl. This is going to be an interesting fight. Santos is coming on this fight as a favorite. Despite coming in on short notice, she has won all 3 of her fights in the UFC so far. She does have a good, well-rounded game with good submission ability, but the UFC has given her some pretty easy opponents, it seems. And, yeah, she's gotten some cupcakes handed to her, to be honest. Casey ONeil has pretty decent grappling skills, but I definitely think that Santos has the better grappling here. But she is the hometown fighter, so if this fight does go to the decision, the judges are probably going to give her the edge. And we know a lot of these women fights, man, they be going to the decision. A lot of women fighters have trouble finishing their opponent. But I think it will be closer than the odds. But I'm going to choose Casey ONeil. I think she's going to have a good bounce back victory. Anytime it's a toss-up, I'm always taking the hometown fighter. So, yeah, this is a low confidence pick, I'd say, but I am going to take Casey here. Now we got Ricardo Ramos versus Josh Culibao. So this is a good fight here. Really good fight. Joshua is a dynamic striker. He's known for his agility and technical striking. He uses a variety of attacks, including kicks, combinations to keep his opponents at bay. But, yeah, this is going to be a close fight. That's why the odds are very close. Josh has a lot of speed, and he's really good at adapting during fights. So, yeah, that's going to allow him to exploit openings in his opponent's defenses. And his UFC record has been mixed. He beats a lot of lower-level guys, but whenever he gets thrown in there with someone pretty good, like a Jalen Turner, he doesn't really perform that well. So this will be interesting. Ricardo Ramos, he's also a versatile fighter. He has really strong grappling, and he has pretty good striking. He is a veteran too, so this one is going to be interesting, but I think I'm going to go with Joshua here. I just think he's better than Ramos in most parts of the game, so yeah, I'm going to go with Joshua here. I think he's going to get the finish. And next up, we got Junior Tafa versus Walter Walker. Junior Tafa, he's another one of those fat Islander heavyweights with some power in his hands, but zero ground game. I don't know what is up with these Islander fighters, specifically the heavyweights, who it almost seems like they don't work on their ground game at all. Like, do they grapple at all, or do they just punch hard? I don't even know. Tafa, he's a knockout artist. Just like his brother, he has enough power to knock out the other guy. Luckily, the UFC is giving him Walter Walker, who is another fat heavyweight with a lay and pray style of fighting, except his wrestling isn't even good enough for him to thrive in this level. Walker struggled against guys who weren't even that good. There's times where he almost looked scared for his life as he tried to desperately bring the fight to the ground. And against a guy like Tafa, that's not a good sign at all. Tafa's going to knock out this guy. That's my prediction. I think he's going to knock him out. And if he can't get it done, well, I think he should consider picking another career, because the UFC is giving him a very favorable matchup here versus Walker. He should definitely knock that guy out. Especially with those odds, I definitely go Tafa there. Next up, we got Carlos Prates versus Li Jingliang. So, Carlos Prates is a pretty big favorite here. I don't know what they are cooking at Fighting Nerds Gym from Brazil, but they have been producing some killers, especially some devastating strikers that have taken the UFC by storm. And Carlos is just one of those promising prospects coming out of their factory. He looks huge for his weight class as well, and his gym has definitely taught him how to utilize those long limbs to deliver devastating knees, kicks, punches, and he has real knockout power. Lee is a 10-year veteran in the UFC, but I definitely believe he has reached his ceiling a while ago. So I'm definitely going to take Carlos in this fight. I don't know if he's going to knock him out, though, because Lee's tough. But I think it will go to the decision, and he'll win there. Alright, next up we got Tuivasa versus Jairzinho. The most common saying in the stock market is to buy low, sell high. And that is definitely what we have here. I believe Tuivasa has the edge here when it comes to pure power. he can deliver some really heavy shots. He has 0 grappling, of course, but Jairzinho, he's not much of a grappler either. He's just a heavy hitter as well. And I think Tuivasa is going to knock him out. I just think he has the more powerful shots, and I think he's a bit of a better striker. All right, now we got Gamrot versus Dan Hooker. Let's get to it. This is going to be a good fight right here. Gamrot, he's a relentless grappler. His high-level wrestling skills. Gamrot's one of the best wet blankets in the promotion. He's a great grappler. He's great at controlling and laying on his opponents and just not letting them go anywhere. Even when he was outstruck by the washed-up Rafael dos Anjos in his previous fight, he resorted to his bread and butter wrestling skills to get another boring win. Yes, I can see why some people don't like his style, but because of his boring fighting style as a bettor, I love fighters like him because at least they have a solid game plan every fight night. And he has a pretty good IQ, something that many fighters lack. And Dan Hooker, he's a dangerous striker. He's got good knockout power. He's a veteran. But honestly, I think he's reached his ceiling. There's a lot of fighters in the division that are better than him. He's a really good fighter, but I just think he's a step below the elite level. But it will be interesting. This is one of those classic grappler versus striker bouts. And yeah, typically in those type fights, I'm always going to take the grappler just because I think that they have a higher chance. You have a higher chance to grab a hold of somebody and control them than you do to knock them out, in my opinion. So this fight, I'm taking Gamrot. This is going to be a good one. He is pretty highly favored, though, so that's a bit interesting, but we'll see, though. It's going to be a good fight. All right, now we got Kai Franz versus Steve Erceg. There's a valid argument that Steve Erceg probably should be the UFC flyweight champ right now. Pantoja did get the victory in the last fight. It was a close one. But in this fight, I'm going to take Steve Erceg. I think he's a beast. I think he can hang with the best in the division. I think he has the talent to be a future champion and hold that belt for a while, honestly. I just think he's locked in. He's up next, and it's his time. He's going to get this win. Now to the main event, to the biggest fight on the card by far. We got Dricus Du Plessis versus Adesanya. The main event we have been waiting for. Honestly, in my opinion, this card is kind of weak. But this main event is a banger. We all know this is a super heated fight. It goes way back to when Du Plessis called out the 3 kings of Africa, Usman, Adesanya, and Ngannou. He called them out. He said, hey, you guys claim you're bringing the belt back home, but you don't even live here in Africa anymore. And that sparked some bad blood, especially with Adesanya, because Adesanya is in the same division as this guy. He's been wanting to fight him for a while. He even went in. Who did he? Oh, it was when he beat Whitaker. When he beat Whitaker, that's when he went in there and he started calling him all types of bad names and said, "You're not a real African. You're not a real African." And yeah, they got some bad blood. And after that, that's when Adesanya then faced Strickland. Strickland beat the brakes off of him. And then Du Plessis beat Strickland, which was really close. In my opinion, I thought Strickland won, but that was a toss-up. I could see Du Plessis getting that finish too. But, or not the finish, getting the victory. But yeah, there's bad blood here. This is going to be a very interesting fight. And I think it's interesting that Du Plessis was willing to fight in Adesanya's hometown. That's pretty interesting. Du Plessis seems like one of those guys where he's smart, man. He's smart, and he waited out the last fight because he was injured, but he's also got that dog in him where he'll just throw down anywhere. So I'm personally going for Du Plessis. I like him a lot. Not a big fan of Adesanya. I think he's cool, but some of the stuff he says I'm not a big fan of. But I think Du Plessis is just better, to be honest. I think Sean Strickland really, really put on a beating on Adesanya. And I think Du Plessis is, obviously he's not the striker that Adesanya is, but he's a really good grappler. He's pretty good all around. And he's just bigger. He's stronger. I mean, Du Plessis is massive. So I think Du Plessis is going to take this one. I do think it's going to be a close, exciting fight, though. Let me say that. Adesanya is definitely the more technical fighter with the reach advantage. So, I mean, that's interesting. He's also in his home. But DDP is one of those underrated fighters, man. He gets underestimated because of his unorthodox style. I think it's interesting how people are already saying that Adesanya's going to go in there and beat the brakes off him. Do I see that? No. Not. Adesanya could win for sure, but he is not going to beat the brakes off this guy. These South Africans are tough. That's not happening, that's for sure. Even though Adesanya is the better striker, DDP is definitely the better grappler. But in the end, I do think that DDP, it's his time. This is his division right now. He's taking over, and I think he's going to win this fight. So those are my predictions. Comment down below what you guys think. What are your guys' predictions? What did you agree with me? What did you disagree with? Comment down below, and I will give an update after this weekend on how we did. Peace.